So Venezuelan food, the big ones are arepas. That's the Venezuelan. That's the food of all food down there in Venezuela, arepas, and they're delicious. So you make them a couple different ways, but mainly it's made out of cornmeal and whatever else good stuff they put in there. A lot of oil. Venezuelans love their vegetable oil. They'll usually have a huge drum of it in the kitchen, and they use it for everything. So oil is king down there, but it's cornmeal. So you think it's like a little cornmeal, oil, water, whatever they get it into, and they make it into kind of a disc. Almost looks like a little thick pancake, and they'll either griddle it, or put it in the oven or fry it. That's my preferred method. So they'll either make an arepa salado, which is salt, kind of more of a salted dough, or they make an arepa dulce where they'll use sugar, which is really good. That was my favorite. So they'll griddle it or fry it, and then they cut it open, and they'll fill it with whatever they can fill it with. Usually, if an investigator or a member, just do it really simple with a little butter, which is really good. Just a little corn pocket with some butter in it. But if you were lucky, you get some ham and cheese in there, which was my favorite. Or you'll get scrambled eggs or carne machada, which is kind of like a pulled beef that they kind of let stew all day and then just kind of pulls apart. So that was really good too. Or they'll fill it with platanos. That's the other main staple of Venezuelan culinary delight. Plantains, so big kind of starchy bananas. Not my favorite, but if they're prepared a certain way, that they can be pretty good. So the way I liked them was cut really thin and fried, so almost like a potato chip, and you just put salt on them. Yeah, so that was really good. But I had missionaries that loved them in the oven with cheese on top. But the way that you'd usually get is they'll just boil it and put it on a plate. Not the best, but if you need to get filled up, they do the job. So that's what I think. One thing I think that Venezuelan cooking is those starchy things. So a lot of rice, a lot of black beans, a lot of lentils. It's just food that'll does a good job of filling you up and doesn't cost a lot of money. So that's kind of what you'll find in Venezuela is a lot of rice, a lot of beans, a lot of arepas, because it's good food that'll fill you up and sustain you for quite a long time. So arepas were my favorite. Empanadas, another one, just so good. We usually my day. So in Venezuela, we were provided lunch from members, and that was really the only meal that we got. So we were on our own for breakfast and dinner, and being a missionary with not a lot of money, you kind of find the food that's cheap and good. So empanadas was usually the go-to. So it's a little fried dough pocket, and they fill it with whatever you can find. So that same pulled beef or the chicken or ham and cheese or mashed potatoes and cheese, which was really, really good. So that was usually my breakfast, a couple empanadas and some fresh orange juice, which was always readily available. So good. That's one thing you're never in short supply of in Venezuela is fruit. There's just fruit everywhere, anything that you can ever imagine. Little bananas and mangoes and passion fruit and orange juice, anything that you really wanted, and fruit's super cheap, so that it was kind of always around. So what else? The Venezuelan dish, the main dish of Venezuela is called pabellon, and what that is usually a plate. You'll get black beans, rice, and plantains, platanos, and then carne machada, so that pulled beef, and that's kind of the main dish of the country of Venezuela is pabellon. So you get that quite a bit. I remember like my second or third day in my first area, this huge plate of pabellon, and I just lunch had never been my go-to meal. Dinner as an American, that's usually where you eat the most food. So you usually think of in Venice, as an American, eat a bowl of cereal for breakfast and maybe a sandwich for lunch, and then you eat a big dinner. Well, in Venezuela, breakfast is nothing, maybe an empanada or a piece of bread, that's panaderias, bakeries are huge in Venezuela. You go get fresh bread, fresh rolls every day, and that's usually what you'll have in the mornings, a little roll, maybe some juice, and that's about it. But then lunch is where you chow down. So getting used to that, my first area was I couldn't eat it, and that was my trainer's rule is you got to eat it or you got to find a way to get rid of it so that they don't get mad or offended. So you struggle through it with about 15,000 glasses of water trying to just get it all down, so that you definitely don't want to ruffle feathers with members that are taking time to feed you. So Yeah, that big plate of pabellon, and it's so hot in those houses without air conditioning. You're just, that hot food trying to get it down, and it usually is super good. But so that was a staple. They do a lot of pasta as well because it's cheap and filling. You'll get a basic tomato sauce. Sometimes if they don't have that available, they'll mix ketchup and mayonnaise together, which they call salsa rosada. So that was another one. Not my favorite, but it works if you're hungry, and they'll put that on pasta with a fried egg on top. Just kind of whatever that they can give you that'll fill you up, that they have available in the house is usually what they'll get you, and you're just grateful that you have a meal. So, but usually everything was pretty good. I did have some interesting food that I ate. Chicken hearts and beef heart and beef tongue and goat. Any part of the goat, usually that they could come up with, you'll have. Yeah, you just kind of learn to roll with it and get used to it, and yeah, that's what you do. But then there, as a missionary on P days, then you get to go, get your McDonald's or Pizza Hut or whatever you want to find. So usually you held out for those Mondays where you could get a little taste of America. I mean, there was no bigger treat than getting a sundae from McDonald's on P Day. This is the best thing ever. So, yeah, but food-wise, that's what we did. We weren't allowed in my mission since Lake Maracaibo was really close. We weren't allowed to eat any fish, so we had to stay away from fish just because waters down there were pretty contaminated, and we didn't want to get. That was the main goal of President and Sister Montino's, to keep us healthy, because if you're a missionary and you can't work, not a good thing. So we tried to eat things, stay away from things that would keep us healthy. So we stayed away from fish. We weren't allowed to eat pork. Mission rule from Pres Martino was no Coca-Cola, so no caffeine, which means we kind of stick to the fruit sodas. So HIT was the big thing down there, which is Fanta. So if you know Fanta, but so you had the good flavor, pineapple, and which was delicious, and mandarin orange, which is awesome, and manzana apple, so good. So that was a treat, walking through a hot, that hot area, going to a bodega and cracking open a ice cold bottle of, pineapple soda was the best, because soda always tastes better out of a glass bottle. So that's what I drank a lot of, soda down there, usually because it was a lot easier to get than water. So water was, clean. Water down there was a little difficult to come by. So if you either bought bottled water at the store or members, we weren't allowed to drink water at investigators' houses. So we usually would have to kind of refuse unless they had soda for us to drink, because members knew that in order to give us water, they had to boil it first. So they had to boil it, get out all of the, whatever contaminants that were in the water, and then once it was boiled, they would set it aside for us to drink. So usually soda was a little easier and cheaper, actually, to get than water for us to drink, and it was always usually cold and delicious. And then the big thing in Venezuela that people drink is Malta, which is, I don't really know how to describe it. I'm not the biggest Malta fan, but if you ask a lot of missionaries from my mission, they love Malta. Almost, for me, it tastes like liquid Raisin Bran. So I don't know what it is, but people love it down there, and then missionaries kind of get used to the taste and really love it and crave it when they come back to the States. So I know there's a couple spots here in Utah where you can go buy Malta, and that's usually what people will do. So, but for me, it was that the soda was my go-to. So. Dessert, tres leches cake was the best. That's kind of their go-to. Big Mexican dessert as well, but it's kind of a cake that you make, and they kind of moisten it with, leche condensada. So sweetened condensed milk is like their big thing down there. They love that stuff. Those, and then like treats. So they'd be like candy bars that they would have. Their big one was called a samba. It's kind of like a wafer with like different flavors. So you do like a strawberry or a chocolate, and then it was covered in chocolate. So a samba bar, and then they had kind of different stuff. They have Cheetos and Doritos and kind of all that stuff. But usually, I was a samba guy. That was usually my treat, my go-to treat. Tres leches is good. And then the cool thing about it is most of the towns, they'll actually have people with walking soft serve ice cream carts. They walk around, the square, and you can kind of get ice cream, or they'll have like shaved ice, not shaved ice, but snow cone carts around, which you kind of have to be careful with depending on how they make the ice. But that was usually anything to keep you cold was usually the way to go. So